Yeah, this is Dave from cheapbooks.com playing World of Tanks. The tank is the M46 Patton KR. This is an American Tier 8 medium tank. It's also a premium tank. I am going to get 5 kills. I'm going to do 3,000 damage and 1,350 EXP.
Enemy armor is damaged.
Now on this map, lately I've been playing in the middle plaza area. And the reason why is because most players are afraid to play there, so it's very easy to go there and dominate. And I like to put pressure on the enemy, try and suppress them, try to find ways to do damage to them. I also like to give an overview of how my team is doing based on early gameplay. And you'll notice that we've still got a lot of tanks at the spawn. They're kind of heading towards the hill. I watched them when the game started. The faster tanks like the M41 Bulldog and the T-37, even though they're probably going to take up positions, they really haven't covered much ground yet. But you will notice that there's a lot of tanks. There's 4 of us headed towards this middle area, which is quite unusual. It's not very common. I'm very happy that these tanks are coming along. It'll make my job a lot easier. So I did take a shot at that T-37. I don't care about hits and misses and stats. To me, I'd rather take the shot even if there's a chance that I will miss. As you can see, I did get a hit. Of course, I am spotted, which means I have to watch out for return fire. You'll notice that my track actually repaired very quickly.
We fixed the track. Get going.
So you have to be a little bit more cautious. The enemy knows that we're coming. This is not the way I normally play, but for some reason I had a little bit of an exception because there was a little bit of action because I got tracked, etc. Now the key things you want to know when you do this maneuver is that over here on the left side, there's gaps. There's a gap where you can cross over, especially you'll notice that I have the 105 octane fuel. It makes it very easy to cross over the gap. And there's going to be openings where you might be able to shoot through windows, which of course might exist over here also. And there's a gap over here, and there's always tanks over here. So you have to be aware of where those gaps are so that you can take advantage of them. And tanks will use them. On the other side, over here, there's more gaps, which means it's a little bit more dangerous when you're assaulting on that side. And over here, there are, of course, less gaps, but there is the opening here that can be shot through. So when I came across, I knew that it's more dangerous on the left and it's safer on the right, which is probably why I turned to the right. The reason why is because the enemy knows that I'm here. So the danger level has increased, which is probably why I chose to go to the right.
Enemy armor is hit.
So this is a skill that you want to learn, obviously, which is to shoot through these windows. The IS-2 did not know I was here. I was unspotted, so he was paying attention to the T-37, even though I'm a bigger threat to him. And unfortunately, he's going to continue to make that mistake. So it's very difficult and challenging to play shooting through those windows. It's something you want to practice doing. And you can see the T-32 has also arrived. Now we have a unique situation. We've got the T-32 and me, and we may be considered equivalent tanks, and the T-37. And on the other side, we have the T-37 and the IS-2, so we outnumber the enemy. So to be aggressive right now is the right move. So that's an example of how you can cross over.
Enemy armor is destroyed.
The T-37 in that case should have ran. You can see that a shot came from up above. I believe it was the SPIC took a shot at me, but he missed.
That one didn't go through.
Now, in this type of a case, we have a strong turret, and I'm using the AP rounds. They're not going to penetrate easily, especially if he moves around a lot. So in this case, it would be better to use high explosive rounds. I switch to the APCR.
They're knocked out.
So I finished him off. You'll notice that the enemy has one on the hill. And we only have lost 3 tanks. And I don't know if all 3 of those tanks were up on the hill, but we've absolutely lost the hill, and they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least 6 tanks on the hill, perhaps more, I'm not sure. So I'm going straight for the base. Got 2 kills. And you can see that we're starting to advance. The whole entire team is advancing, for the most part, except for the KV-4 and the IS-3. Now, you've heard the expression, win the hill, win the game. It's not true. Don't believe it. I don't know if this game is going to be an example of that or not. Normally, I don't go on the cap unless I want to cap. The reason why you want to stay off the cap is because when you're on the cap, the enemy knows where you are. This is an exception because you can't really avoid going on the cap when you're in the backfield. The cap extends all the way across. So in order to cross over here, you have to be on it. But the enemy may be confused, and they may think that you want to cap instead of just passing through. So they might rush back to try and reset the cap. So you have to be aware of that.
Ready to fire.
You'll notice that I did angle my tank even though it's facing reverse. One of the things that I learned today is that in the past I was zooming out and checking my angle like this, but if you look at the lower left corner, there's a small diagram of the tank, and you can look at that diagram to see what your angle is. And I'm going to start using that from now on to angle my tank. But ideally, I need to turn my tank around so that he doesn't hit my rear, because he could set my engine on fire. You can see I'm turning around right now while I'm reloading.
Penetration.
And that's one of the reasons why you want to use the auto aim. You'll notice that I release the auto aim, and if you listen to my videos, you'll know that I turn the auto aim on and off constantly. The SPIC is a safer target to go after, and he's also an immediate threat. I don't want to be unloaded when he comes around the corner, because then he would get a free shot on me. So I had to change targets.
Target acquired.
Now in this case,
Armor is hit.
not only do you want to shoot that tank, but you want to ram it too. If he continues to drive forward, I'm going to try and anticipate where he's driving to, and I'm going to try to either ram him or somehow make it so that he rams into me, because chances are he will get more damage than I will. So you can see I went forward and he tried to go behind me, and when I saw that, I reversed my tank to hit him so that it was technically a ram, even though I would have preferred if he had rammed me. You can rewind the video and see that that's what happened.
Enemy armor is destroyed. Ready to fire. Enemy vehicle destroyed.
Okay, so that's 4 kills. And you'll also notice that I did use the dead tank to block incoming shots. Now here we have an interesting case, because the score is 10-3. I have 9 base capture points. There's an E50 out in the middle of nowhere. showing me his side armor, and I've got APCR loaded, and I did probably have the APCR, so I would guarantee to kill that Mutz. So I'm going to get some shots at that E50. This would be a good time to use high explosive rounds. You could definitely do more damage. Oh, actually, he's a tier 9 and I'm a tier 8, so maybe it isn't such a good idea. The other thing is I want to stay on the cap, and I want to make sure I have the right angle.
Penetration.
Now he's moving back and forth because he's got 4 heavy tanks in front of him. So he has to keep on moving so that it's harder for them to hit his weak spots. And it looks like he's kind of behind a corner. Maybe he's trying to side scrape. And because he's moving around, that's why I can't use the auto aim. I have to aim manually. Now, when he turned his gun at me, my gun was not loaded yet. So I reversed so that while I'm reloading, I'm hidden. The only time I would advocate being in the open while you're unloaded is if there's no threat. But since there is a threat, I had to change. You'll also notice that right at the point where I'm reloaded, I moved forward, and I time it so that as soon as I am ready to fire, my gun is reloaded.
Target acquired.
And
Armor is hit.
I use the auto aim so that I can go forward with the peekaboo method and reverse and keep on doing it repeatedly, so I expose my tank for the shortest amount of time.
Enemy armor is destroyed.
So that's 5 kills, and if you watch the method I use, you'll notice once again, I paid attention to the reload, and as soon as it was about to reload, I went forward, and because there was a threat that he might shoot at me, I was a little bit more cautious, which means I made sure that I was reloaded before I came out into a firing position. But I don't always do that. The score is 12-4, and you can also see that they are capping our base. So I am going up against a tier 9 tank, so I'm keeping the APCR rounds loaded.
Target acquired.
So you'll notice when I came around the corner, I immediately used the auto aim. And the reason why is because no matter what happens, if you hit a bump or if an ally bumps into you or if you spin your tank around, when you use the auto aim, the gun will be locked on to that enemy tank. So I click the auto aim and fire immediately afterwards, and it increases the chance that my shot's going to hit. And you'll also notice that I'm moving up to try and hit his side armor, because even though I have the APCR, there's a good chance I could still bounce off that tank. If I get beside him, the chance of bouncing is going to decrease dramatically.
One of our tanks is damaged.
So
Penetration.
I rammed him to do a little bit of damage, and I did shoot at him. It didn't do a lot of damage, which was a little bit unusual. But I'm also shooting at him,
See the target.
taking a perpendicular shot, and I rammed him again to try and cause more damage. I would have kept ramming him again and again and again. So the last tank is the artillery. He's going to be, I believe, in the southeast corner. There he is. So you'll notice that we got the 15th kill and we capped the enemy base at 100% at exactly the same time. This tank is the M46 Patton KR. It's an American Tier 8 medium tank, and it's also a premium tank. The KR does mean Korea. This is a tank that was built or otherwise used in the Korean War by the United States. And this particular premium tank is painted to have claws and teeth and to look like it has eyes and a tiger pattern, and it is known as the Ripper. In terms of crew, it has 5 crew members. The more crew members on a premium tank is good because when you use it to level up your crew for crew training, you can train more people at the same time. So it actually has a benefit. Premium tanks with more crew members, in some cases, will give you more skills, and you level up more people. For example, you could have 2 loaders, and one can have safe stowage, and the other one could have the adrenaline rush, and it would be easier. They'd be able to do it with just 1 skill each. I have the standard layout for all of my tanks with the crew. For example, for the commander, I have BIA, 6th Sense, Jack of all trades. The reason why I use Jack of all trades is because I don't need the medical first aid kit, and it also has recon because I want to be able to see the enemy before they see me. My gunner has BIA. It has Deadeye, which in Deadeye is good and Designated Target is good. You have to, I just arbitrarily pick one of the two. It has Snapshot. I recommend Snapshot for every tank you have. It makes your gun more accurate. It stabilizes the gun just like the vertical stabilizer and the gun laying drive. It affects firing your gun, and that's why it's important. And I have a rule that the gun has to be the priority because the game is about shooting other tanks. And then I have camouflage on my remaining skill. For the driver, I have BIA, Smooth Ride. Smooth Ride again stabilizes your gun while you're driving, and I have this on all of my tanks for the same reason, because I want to improve the aim ability of my gun and the accuracy. And then I have camo, and then I have off-road driving. If I had to do it over again, I probably would have put off-road driving before I put camo. I highly recommend off-road driving. In my testing, I've had dramatic results. They climb hills faster. You just get better performance, especially with the higher octane fuel. For my radio operator, I have BIA, I have concealment, situational awareness, and firefighting. The reason why I use firefighting is so that I don't need the automatic fire extinguisher. If you get the driver with the engine maintenance, it absolutely works to reduce fires, and it only takes 1 crew skill. Having firefighting does make a difference. If you have 1 crew member at 100% and you have full health and you catch on fire, it will probably save you when otherwise you would not have been saved. So it does, having at least 1 at 100% makes a huge difference. For the loader, I have BIA, safe stowage, concealment, and repairs. And I have repairs on very few tanks. Usually loaders and radio operators have repair and fire extinguishers, the firefighting abilities, because they just have less skills that I think are more of a priority. The reason why I don't use repairs on most of my tanks, and I mean all of my tanks, even my heavy tanks I don't use repairs, is because I prefer to carry 2 first aid kits. I don't want it to be like this always. I'd rather use the food consumables, but right now I'm using the 2 first aid kit, the 2 repair kit system. I've been doing that for 3 years. I don't always use a second repair kit. You can reduce your reliance on the repair kit by getting, for example, safe stowage. You won't have to repair your ammo rack as often. In fact, since I've been using safe stowage, I don't remember having my ammo rack damaged. It's been a long time, and before it was happening all the time. So it does make a big difference. Okay, so that is my crew skills. They do come from 2 different tanks, the M46 Patton and the T54E1. Now, in terms of equipment, I like to use the gun rammer, coated optics, and vents. I use coated optics because I'm always on the front lines. You watch my videos, I'm always going to be the first one into battle. I need to see the enemy before they see me. I use the gun rammer because when it comes to that head-on combat, which I do frequently, you want to reload as fast as possible and keep on nailing the enemy tanks again and again and again. And vents I use because it improves a large variety of different aspects of the game, such as your reload time, and etc. Maybe your traverse speed. It will show you what it improves and what it doesn't if you hover over each element. I use generally a third AP, a third APCR, and a third high explosive rounds. With this tank, I only have 10 high explosive rounds, and I have 30 AP and 30 APCR. To me, having 10 high explosive rounds is a little low. And the reason why is because high explosive rounds are great for hitting the sides of tanks or the back of tanks. You can set engines on fire, they damage easily, and to hit round surfaces. So that's why I carry a lot of high explosive rounds. And as I mentioned before, I use a small repair kit, the large repair kit, which gives you a repair bonus in terms of repair speed, and I use the high octane fuel. The high octane fuel makes a big difference. It allows me to run around the map and chase down enemy targets. I have around 12 Tier 8 premium medium tanks, and how does this compare to other Tier 8 premium medium tanks? I like this tank a lot. Would I say it's my favorite? No. I had the T56, the T26E4, which is very similar to, for a long time, so I really enjoy taking this out because it's a little bit more like a heavy tank. And I'm always happy to take out the M46 because it's got that extra speed that I really like. The German tanks, they have accurate guns, but I don't know, I'm not that crazy about driving these Panther tanks. However, the Mutz is really good. The T44 and the T54, these are great medium tanks. This French tank, it's kind of like a heavy tank, has a long reload. I believe it does a lot of damage. It's slow. The CDC is really fast and zippy, but it's got really weak armor. And then you've got the STA-2. This is a good overall medium tank. The 59 Patton, I get good games with it. And then you got the T-34. I used to hate these tanks, but when I learned to use them for hit and run, I really started to appreciate, because that's basically all you can do with it, is get close to the enemy, blast them, and run and hide. They do a good amount of damage, but the aim is horrible, so you have to get close to the enemy. So how does this compare? Okay, then we also have the FV-4202. I think that there's a lot of variety in medium tanks, and I really like the variety, but some of them, like the FV-4202, you might think is more like a heavy tank. So in terms of how does this compare, I would say it might not be the best Tier 8 medium tank, but if you rank them on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the best, I would say it's around a 4. Are there tanks that I think are better? I would say seriously take a look at the T26E4 if you want a Tier 8 medium tank. Seriously consider the Panzer Mutz. This is a wonderful tank. This is everything you want in a medium tank in terms of speed and mobility and things like that. And the Japanese STA-2, I highly recommend this as a medium tank. The FV-4202, like I said, I love to play this tank, but it is a little bit more like playing a heavy tank. So I do recommend the M46 Patton, especially if you have a lot of American tanks and you want to train your American crew. So I've loaded up a comparison of all of my Tier 8 premium medium tanks. There's about 12 of them. And one thing you're going to notice is that in terms of the shell damage, hit points of damage, the M46 KR is quite similar to all the other tanks. They're all within the same range, with the exception of the M4A1, the French tank, and the T34-3, which is a tank that I recommend for hit-and-run tactics. In terms of penetration, it's kind of in the middle also. In fact, I would say it's in the middle range. Absolutely, it's in the middle range. Gun depression looks like it's decent. In terms of hull armor and turret armor, the hull and turret armor is the best you're going to get out of a medium tank, so you're going to be fine in that respect. When it comes to speed, the CDC is going to beat everybody. The CDC is a light tank. It's very fast, very mobile. The M46 KR is also a fast tank. It looks like it's not with the top of the top, but it's not at the bottom. It's kind of, I guess it is kind of in the middle also in terms of speed. In terms of its ability to hide, the concealment factor, it's actually near the bottom. So hiding is going to be difficult with this tank, whether you're moving or stationary. And then you've got the spotting range. The spotting range is almost the same for all of these tanks. It does have a greater radio range, which is a little bit important in terms of premium tanks because you cannot change the radio. So for example, if you had this Panther 8.8, you could get stuck with a very low radio range. So in that sense, when you look at the overall, the strengths of the M46 KR is going to be in the armor. And other than that, it's kind of like, I would say overall, it's just kind of in the middle as compared to all the other tanks. There's 3 medium tanks in the American tech tree that are similar to the M46 Patton KR. It's the Tier 8 Pershing, the Tier 9 M46 Patton, and the Tier 10 M48 Patton. Now all these tanks are very similar. They're going to be played about the same. If you look at the specifications, they're actually more similar than you might think in their stock form. The biggest difference is that the M48, the Tier 10, has more armor, more hit points, etc. So now the M46 KR is a Tier 8 medium tank, but it's nearly identical to the Tier 9 M46 Patton. So if you want to know what this tank is like before buying it, you could play the M46 Patton, which is a Tier 9, or play the Pershing and get kind of an idea of what it might be like. And even the tank that comes before it, which I believe is the T20, is in many ways going to be similar to the M46, although the M46 is of course a way better tank than the T20. There's a lot of competition in terms of availability of Tier 8 premium medium tanks, so should you buy this tank? If you want a fast tank, it's not the fastest. There's the CDC and others that are going to be much faster. If you want something that can battle with heavy tanks, it's not going to be the best for battling against heavy tanks, although it can do it. If you want to be able to battle with the heavy tanks, you're going to need something like the T26E4 or the French M4A1, etc. So this is kind of like that. This is actually what a medium tank is. It's not that fast, not that armored, and it kind of fits that middle range. However, I think that you should really take a closer look at some of the other tanks. If you really want the ideal medium tank, I would say the Panzer Mutts might be a little bit more fun to play, or something like the T-54 first prototype.